Hello, and thank you for joining me at the battle booth. In this video, I have two questions that I'm trying to address. One, who is behind Midnight Madness? Two, what is the purpose of Midnight Madness? Let's talk about it.
Ask Beasley, did we create this a month ago? We did not have a name, but we formatted everything a month ago. All you gotta do is ask him. You don't gotta believe me. Ask him. See what he says. You can tweet him. You can do that. Just ask him. This was formatted for us. But guess what? It's okay. Okay, Surf want to do it his way. Let him do it his way. I'm all for it. Or y'all not woke.
Battle Booth is hot for gang on the low. He hot for gang on the low. I'm Battle Booth gang, so y'all know what it is. Y'all know what it is.
The Battle Booth. If you look him up, y'all go subscribe to his channel.
Midnight Madness has been the hottest topic in battle rap ever since the new year began, January of 2022. Midnight Madness has been at the tip of everybody's tongue. Battlers, fans, media outlets, everybody. Midnight Madness is becoming so big that it's actually trending the hashtag on Twitter. This is how big Midnight Madness is becoming before it actually comes to fruition in front of our eyes. Midnight Madness is the hottest topic in battle rap, period. There's just some questions that a lot of us have, though. A lot of questions that I feel are still unanswered. A lot of us are very curious as to what's really going on. What really is Midnight Madness? Is this something that's actually going to be beneficial to the individual artist, the independent artist, the independent individual battler? Who's really behind the scenes pulling the strings to this Midnight Madness that is coming to life right before our eyes? And ultimately, what is the purpose of Midnight Madness? Personally, I don't know if you guys have been in tune or tapped into the Twitter spaces that have been surfacing on YouTube, on Twitter. Recently, Averb came out and had a lot to say regarding this new Midnight Madness trend that Sue Surf is claiming to have started all on his own, without the help of anybody. That includes the URL or any other battlers. Sue Surf is claiming that he came up with this idea. Averb came out and exposed the fact that Averb had discussions with Beasley.
Ask Beasley, did we create this a month ago?
Prior to Midnight Madness ever actually coming to fruition. There were conversations that were already had with URL management. This is straight out of Verb's lips, straight out of Verb's mouth. He had discussions with Beasley prior to the situation ever even occurring, before this Midnight Madness thing went down. I presented the clip already, but that's the situation. Averb exposes that Beasley, URL, is behind Midnight Madness. Now, some people might be very confused. Some people might be confused as to why it is that URL would be involved with Midnight Madness, but wouldn't want to make it known to the public that they are involved with Midnight Madness. There's a lot of confusion surrounding this. There's a lot of theories going out there. There's a lot of speculation going out there. Ultimately, this is what I believe. This is speculation. This is what I believe is going on. This is why I believe that the URL is not admitting that they are the ones that are pulling the strings or are behind the scenes to this whole Midnight Madness thing that's going on. First, there's a couple of very basic reasons. They all have to do with financial reasons, if you ask me. They all have to do with financial reasons. For one, The URL voids responsibility for what's going on. If the URL is not involved with what's going on, the URL can't be held responsible for what happens. So for example, let's just say, this is just an example. If, let's say a fight breaks out at one of these Midnight Madness events, people are hurt, you know, things are going on, whatever the case is, there's a lot of liability, there's a lot of responsibility that the people throwing the event would have to take and acquire. Like, there's a lot of liability and responsibility. URL is able to now, with this and through this Midnight Madness, separate themselves from that. The URL does not have to attach themselves to that situation, so they can void responsibility. The URL also would not have to book actual battles. If you really think about it, this allows the URL to not have to actually spend nearly as much money as the URL would have to spend in order to actually book battles and actually book battlers. This allows for battlers to make their own battles, battle on their own accord, all these things for free. And then the URL will ultimately have the decision as to whether or not they want to, one, book this person. Are they making enough noise? Two, is this battle good enough to put on YouTube, on our YouTube channel? Multiple reasons. So now the URL doesn't have to pay. They don't have to invest into a big stage. They don't have to invest into giving battlers deposits and actually paying and having to negotiate with battlers. On top of all this, the URL is able to obtain content. We all know that YouTube is the biggest platform in the world when it comes to video, like YouTube is that platform. Sue Surf said it himself. YouTube created these superstars. It was YouTube that created these superstars.
Like what got me famous is YouTube. What got him famous is YouTube.
YouTube is the engineer, is the engine that engineered some of these guys to blow up the way that they did. So what this also does is it provides an opportunity for the URL to underpay and undercut for battles. The URL is not going to have to now pay what they usually would to any battlers in order to get a battle out of them. At the same time, the YouTube is able to utilize this situation to get content onto YouTube. And again, we all know that YouTube is literally probably the most important tool when it comes to you blowing up or when it comes to you becoming known. We all know this. If you're not a fan of battle rap already, right? If you're not already a battle rap fan, you don't know that the battles, you can find them on the URL.TV app. You don't know that. If you're not already a battle rap fan, you don't know that you have to catch these battles live on Caffeine in order to watch a battle. You don't know these things. So the only other option for these people that are not battle rap fans already, that you would like to turn into battle rap fans, is for these people to find you. These people have to find you. The most important tool for that to happen and occur is YouTube and Google. Google and YouTube are the most important tools when it comes to being discovered and being found. Period. So this also allows for the URL to finally utilize the YouTube platform again.
If URL want to come in and say, yo, we got this amount of bread for that, I feel like I did my job as Chris Paul to get them to the YouTube page. Yeah. 1 million subscribers. I feel like what got me famous is YouTube. What got him famous is YouTube. They're taking that away from other battlers. 100%. How big would Real Sick be? How big would Easy be? They'd be bigger. I see some little young nigga from Baltimore, he's 21 years old. We give him $10,000. He just owes us 10 battles.
This is another reason that the URL would not want it to be known that they are behind the scenes and pulling the strings when it comes to this new farming system. We're going to stick with that terminology, farming system. We're going to consider and reference Midnight Madness as a farming system. because ultimately that's what Midnight Madness is doing. The objective is to build talent, is to continue to bring exposure and light to people so that they can possibly potentially make it onto the big stage, the NBAs, basically. Okay, so we all know, we're all familiar with, or we should all be familiar with, the infamous lawsuit that's going on between Norbs and the URL. We should all at this point, if we're battle rap fans, be very familiar with what's going on. Norbs was a part of the URL. He was 1/4 of the owners, Chico, Beasley, Smack, and Norbs. Norbs was responsible for things like the Crucible and recruiting talent onto the URL, which is where the connection comes in when it comes to this lawsuit and this new farming system known as Midnight Madness. The objective is to get new talent, new people, new looks. That's pretty much what Norb's job and responsibilities were when it came to the URL. Now, interestingly enough, the URL pretty much cannot admit that they are behind this. The URL almost can't admit it. Because, and I was actually talking to Norbs the other day, and this goes beyond what we know, pretty much. Like, the URL can't admit that they're behind this, because that would mean that the Crucible or their previous method farming system failed, because that's what this is doing. So if the URL were to admit that they're behind this, people would be asking why. Like, people would be wondering why. The reason that it's happening is because the URL needs to farm talent. They need to create talent. In order for the URL to last long term and become the empire that it wants to become, it needs to farm talent. It needs a place to get talent from. It needs a place to get all the talent from so that they can continue to sell to us. Midnight Madness is supposed to be an engine that helps create that. Let's use this example. I think this example would help us understand what a farming system is. Chicken. Let's take chicken, for example. The meat. Chicken. Nowadays, chicken is injected with steroids and all types of things in order to create more chicken. Because the demand for chicken is so high. An organic farming system, like a natural farming system, wouldn't produce enough chicken to sell to meet the demand. So then we start to do things like inject chickens with steroids to where they become bigger in size now, and now there's more to sell. Now there's more chicken to sell. Now we're closer to meeting that demand. That's kind of like what this system is. As of right now, Battle Rap or the URL doesn't really have a good farming system. They don't have... The Crucible is supposed to be that farming system where they get their stars and where they get the next great battle rapper or whatever. It's not happening, though. So the URL is moving towards a different farming system. Now, if the URL were to admit and come out and say that they are behind this this questions would start to come up, like why, blah, blah, blah. Then the URL would have to admit, right? They would have to admit that the Crucible is not working. They don't have a place to get talent. What would that do? That would make Norbs' case a lot stronger. That would make Norbs' lawsuit a lot stronger, because that would help to prove Norbs' point that he was essential to the URL. If the Crucible is no longer working and it was a creation of Norbs, right? That means that it's failing. And if the URL starts to become questioned about what's going on, they would almost have to admit that the Crucible is failing. And again, Norbs was the person who was behind recruiting. So this would help prove Norbs' case. This has to do with a lot more than what we even know. The URL is not even if they wanted to admit that they are behind this, they can't. Because this goes further into proving what Norbs was there for. I hope this makes sense to you guys.
One, it basically allows you to get free battles. Secondly, what it does is it puts light on other people using the dynamics of a Sue Surf, a Hitman Holla, an Averb, and all that type of stuff, to then put up a bunch of battles that nobody cares about by having people bet.
So, at this point, we've addressed who is behind Midnight Madness and why it is that the URL would prefer it not be known that they are not behind Midnight Madness. For example, liability reasons. There's a lot of liability and responsibility the URL would have to take after if they're the ones that are booking all these battlers to do all these small battles. URL gets to undercut and underpay battlers for YouTube and content. The URL doesn't have to book big stages. They don't have to book deposits. They don't have to do anything. There's not much of an investment at all when it comes to this, right? And then last but not least, we have this whole situation going on with the Norbs case and the Norbs lawsuit, to where the URL can't outright admit that they are running this system, because if they do, that would in turn prove that the Crucible is a dud, right? And that they need a new way to get new talent, which would then prove that Norbs was in fact essential to the business and was a big part of the Crucible and getting talent, recruiting talent to the URL. Those are just a few of the many reasons that URL would prefer to be behind the scenes when it comes to running such a, I want to say, monopoly on battle rap. Here's why I say monopoly on battle rap, though. If you guys listen closely, Sue Surf said something that hit home for me, right? In that clip that I just showed you guys, Sue Surf said something that really just hit home to me. And it's something that kind of confirms something that I've believed and thought about the URL and where battle rap is going. It confirms for me that the URL is in fact becoming the big label when it comes to battle rap. It's becoming Atlantic Records when it comes to battle rap. URL is becoming exactly that. What's happening right now, and I feel like part of the purpose of Midnight Madness is to start to create and find new talent, which is of course a very smart idea for a business that plans to be or run or exist long term. You have to find a way to create talent. If you're a business, you have to find a way to get your product. If you're a business that sells a product, you have to find a way to get that product. That brings us back to the whole farming system thing, to where if there's not enough chicken, you have to find a way to get more chicken out of the chicken we have. So what do? We start using steroids and all these other things to get more chicken. That's what's happening with Midnight Madness. The way that it's happening, though, and Sue Surf said it. He says, what if we find, we find a 21-year-old from out of Baltimore, you know what I'm saying, who just comes from the ghetto, doesn't know much, you know what I'm saying, he's a battle rapper, and we give him, we think he's nice, we think he's pretty good, we'll give him like 10K, all right? After we give him the 10K, or whatever the case is, he'll owe us 10 battles. Think about that for a second. Think about that for a second. Think about the fact that that's exactly what a label will do to an up-and-coming artist. Think about the fact that when an up-and-coming artist that's naive, that doesn't know anything about the business, is trapped into a contract and signs their name, think about the fact that what they're signing is pretty much a trap in a 360 deal. So because that young person, Sue Surf made it clear that it's a young person that's like 20, 21 years old. Those people tend to be naive. The younger you are, the more naive you are and ignorant you are to what the industry and what contracts and things like that are. Find one of these people that are good. And this is part of the objective of Midnight Madness, right? Is to find talent, but to also trap these guys into 360 deal type contracts, to where this is exactly what labels do. So a label, right? and this is, I've done some research on this. This was actually said by Adam22. If you guys want to look up Adam22, when he talks about industry plants, like plants in the industry and things like that, he's not saying that plants are real. He's just explaining why people think it is that plants are real. And it's for reasons like this. For example, a label will find an artist. Let's say, you know, go on Spotify, you know, whatever streaming service, you know, you find a bunch of newer up and coming, you know, rappers that are not famous. There's people that work for companies such as Atlantic Records that will go out and look for people that are not blown up yet, rappers that are not blown up yet, but that are putting out music, right? And that might have a small following. The purpose of finding these people is because an industry, right, a label, is able to then promote, push, and market this person. So before the public, all of us, get to know who this person is, right, a label can find them, push, market, and promote them, and blow them up faster than anybody can imagine. That's a goal for labels, because what that does when you do that, right, that means you have found an artist that has no worth yet, that is not valuable yet, doesn't know their worth, is most likely ignorant and naive, is still young. All these things, because that, at that point, what you're able to do is you're able to lock in or trap this artist or this young person into a contract for years on end. When it comes to the music industry, it's for time frames. When it comes to battle rap, it's for a certain amount of battles, which also can equate to time frames. So at the same time, right, that those are the reasons that URL is running this and is behind this. This is also what part of the purpose is when it comes to Midnight Madness. URL hasn't been able to generate or create new talent. They've been failing in that aspect. So now URL has an opportunity to build talent, to get people hot, to make people popular, right? Because we have all these battle rappers and all these things, all these belts now, right? And all this noise going on around certain battle rappers now, because Midnight Madness is now a thing. So now people's names are going to be more out there. If battles actually start to go through, people's popularity is going to rise. People that haven't been discovered, newer people that are not necessarily known to the battle rap community, will likely get to be known if they, you know, either reach out or pay to get onto a team or whatever the case is. But the objective is a new farming system. But what happens though is that, and what battle rappers need to be careful for when joining something like Midnight Madness, is exactly what Sue Surf just said, right? Is that you're not locked into a deal where now you owe Sue Surf and URL 10 battles. That's a huge issue, because first and foremost, I'm sure that if I ask Sue Surf, will you do 10 battles for 10K? He'll look at me like, he'll look at us like we were not smart people. He would look at us like we were crazy. Would I do what for what? So we know off rip that this is undercutting a lot of battle rappers. Half the battle rappers that are going to be battling on Midnight Madness won't even be paid. Won't even be paid. Also, if these battle rappers and the people that are involved with Midnight Madness were to find out that the URL was in fact behind or involved with Midnight Madness, these battle rappers would have to get paid. Like, battle rappers are not going to go for it. They're not going to go for the fact that, oh, URL's behind this, and I'm doing this for potentially for free if I lose, blase blah. There's so many reasons why the URL would want to keep their foot out of the pot while pulling the strings in the background. It's very beneficial to the URL for this to happen. On top of all of this, though, on top of all of the reasons that I've given for, you know, who really is behind, you know, Midnight Madness, you know, what exactly is why would the URL not want us to know, and what exactly is the purpose of Midnight Madness? Sue Surf says time and time and time again, and lets us know that he would never do anything. He would never do anything to step on the toes of the URL. In this situation, Sue Surf would be utilizing a big part of URL's roster to create content. That also lets me know that the URL is in fact involved. The URL would not allow for anybody to try to start a whole nother league or entity or platform or whatever this is with half of their roster. Surf would be using a good portion of the URL roster to make this happen. The URL would not allow that if they were not involved in the situation. The URL would not allow that if it was not beneficial to the URL in some way. The URL would never allow something like that. One of the many reasons as well is because we get to put a lot of the battle rappers that have been benched back into the mix. The URL needs content. Content is the name of the game here. The URL needs to continue to pump out content. One of the only ways to do that is to get battle rappers in motion. Is to get more battle rappers in motion. If you guys really, really think about this, there's only a certain amount, maybe like 5 to 10 battle rappers that are really keeping the URL alive right now. There's really like only 5 to 10 battlers that are keeping the URL alive right now. That can't continue to happen down the road. The URL can't just survive off of the 5 to 10 battle rappers they put on every card. That's not possible. You know what I mean? And there's multiple reasons for that as well. The more that becomes the case, the more valuable these battlers become, the same ones that they're repeatedly using on cards, the more that they're going to be able to ask for, the more that things start to change. So the URL needs to start to have a different outlook on where we're going to get talent. How are we going to get talent? And how are we going to get talent for cheap, for next to nothing? Midnight Madness is a perfect way to achieve a bunch of these things. So ultimately, in conclusion, to wrap this up, I feel like Midnight Madness can be beneficial to certain people. Midnight Madness is not going to be beneficial to everybody. It's going to be beneficial to certain people. Those people that, for example, aren't getting a look, aren't getting any attention, aren't getting booked, you have an opportunity now, right, to join a team, start up some controversy with whomever it may be. I mean, it can't be whoever, because you can't just start a beef with like a Tay-Rock and he's going to come outside and battle you. But you can stir up something, with somebody else and bring attention to yourself, as well as, a potential matchup or whatever the case is. As long as you're a battle rapper who's willing to take the risk at losing a battle, you know what I'm saying? Taking that hit to your resume, not getting paid. If you're somebody who doesn't really, care too much about really knowing your worth, and being an independent person and things like that. Like, if you don't care about, things like this, could be a good opportunity, to really just, if you're really just about competition, right? And you just want to show your skills and show your stuff to people, this is a good place for you. Like, it'll be a decent place to battle, right? Because you can get the look, you can get some momentum going, whatever the case is. You know what I mean? As long as you're aware of what Sue Surf said in this video, as long as you're aware that, there could come a situation where you're going to be offered a certain amount of money to do a certain amount of battles. And it might seem like a crazy deal, like 10 battles for 10K, that's insane. So to pay attention to situations like that, to where you're not locked in and putting yourself or locking yourself into situations where now you're having to, now you owe 10 battles because you got a 10K advance. That still kind of blew my mind, because the thing what's crazy about that is kind of similar to like being an artist. The labels would put you on a contract that is terrible, because if you blow up, right? Let's say you're on a contract with Atlantic Records for 10 years and you blow up that first year, or you blow up that second year to where you now become like Megan Thee Stallion, right? You now become like huge. You're still stuck on that contract that you signed initially, which is a horrible, terrible contract. So you wouldn't be able to even utilize your popularity or any of the momentum you built after your first, second, third battles, because you'll still be on a contract where you owe 8 more battles. It's pretty much like a 360 deal type of thing, bro. To where these guys, it doesn't matter how big you blow up after signing with a record label, whatever, you're still gonna owe what it is, the advance that they gave you at first, and you sign a paper that says that you're not going to get any of the royalties or you don't get anything for any of the albums you sell. You don't get anything for any of the music stream. You just got that advance at the beginning, and you have to pay that advance back, but you get nothing else. So you only ever got a 10K advance for 10 battles, period. You never managed to renegotiate, ask for anything because you signed a terrible contract that trapped you into a situation for 10 battles. But again, it could be very, very beneficial to some battlers who aren't getting the look right now. So let me know what y'all think in the comments below. I think Midnight Madness still has a ways to go. We still have the first event. Hopefully the first event goes copaesthetically, you know what I mean? That way we have a better idea as to what this whole Midnight Madness thing is going to be looking like down the road.